The purpose of this U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Los Angeles District Animation is to inform the public of the Department of Defense's current and historical activities at the former Kingman Ground-to-Ground Gunnery Range. The former Kingman Ground-to-Ground Gunnery Range is located on the north side of Kingman, Arizona. The southern boundary of the site overlaps the Kingman city limits and extends for 10 miles to the northeast. The entire gunnery range encompasses an estimated 20,000 acres. Currently, the majority of the former ground-to-ground gunnery range is being used for grazing and ranching operations, with approximately 25% being used for residential and commercial purposes. In August 1942, the Kingman Ground-to-Ground Gunnery Range was established as part of the Army Air Force's Flexible Gunnery School under the jurisdiction of the West Coast Flying Training Command. Training began in January 1943. The Flexible Gunnery Training specialized in training gunners to use the defensive turrets and armaments found on the B-17 bomber, an aircraft that was vulnerable to enemy attacks due to its relatively slow speed. Within the boundary of the ground-to-ground gunnery range, the DoD constructed approximately 89 buildings in an area referred to as the Ordnance Magazine and Target Range. In addition to these facilities, the site consisted of 5 ground-to-ground moving target ranges, 2 .22 caliber moving target ranges with 20 targets per range, 15 skeet ranges, 1 50-trap moving base range, a shotgun turret range, a 300-yard rifle range, and 2 malfunction ranges. A typical training program at the Flexible Gunnery School consisted of 6 weeks of classroom and field training. The first 2 weeks were dedicated to orientation lectures and classroom instruction, which occurred at the Kingman Army Airfield, located southeast of the ground-to-ground gunnery range. The third and fourth weeks consisted of gunnery training at the Kingman Ground-to-Ground Gunnery Range. The fifth and sixth weeks were devoted to air firing at the Kingman Air-to-Air Gunnery Range, which was located north of the ground-to-ground gunnery range. In the first phase of the ground-to-ground gunnery training, students practiced trap shooting, .22 caliber rifle firing, and weapons malfunction. Instruction in trap shooting was performed to familiarize trainees with the handling and firing of a gun, since the majority of students had never fired a weapon before entering the gunnery school. Familiarization with and the firing of .22 caliber rifles occurred on 2 ranges, each with 20 targets. This phase of the training was conducted to teach gunners the importance of making proper sighting adjustments. Weapons malfunction training occurred on the malfunction ranges. Here the trainees learned how to evaluate the causes of gun malfunctions, and how to identify and repair guns. From there, the training progressed to skeet and moving base practice with shotguns. The second phase of the ground-to-ground training consisted of moving base instruction and turret shotgun practice. The primary objective of moving base instruction was to teach the proper amount of lead to allow for a target. On the moving base range, shotguns were mounted on trucks. The moving truck was used to simulate the course of an airborne B-17. While the truck was in motion, skeet were fired from traps which were positioned at various angles along the path of the moving truck. The skeet were used as substitutes for attacking enemy fighters, thus providing the gunnery student with a simulation of actual combat. Turret shotgun training consisted of the gunnery student firing shotguns mounted in turrets. The student learned to operate the electrically powered turret while firing at clay pigeons released from 40-foot towers. Trainees completed their ground-to-ground coursework on the moving target range with practice in handheld and turret firing with 30 caliber and 50 caliber ammunition. Gunnery students fired at Jeep-type moving targets from a common firing line. The types of weapons that were used at the former Kingman Ground-to-Ground Gunnery Range are categorized as small arms, which includes rifles, automatic rifles, pistols, machine guns, and shotguns. The ammunition that was used for these weapons included .22 caliber, 30 caliber, 45 caliber, and 50 caliber for handguns, rifles, and machine guns, and separate ammunition was used for shotguns. On November 15, 1945, the site was declared surplus to the needs of the military. Custody of the range was assumed by the Department of the Interior on April 10, 1946. From this point forward, the site has been predominantly used for grazing and ranching operations. The southern portion of the site is used for residential and commercial purposes. Under the formerly used Defense Sites Program, or FUDS, the U.S. Army Engineering and Support Center in Huntsville, Alabama, examined the site for the existence and use of military munitions. In February 1996, the Corps conducted a site survey and determined that there was no evidence of high explosive munitions at the ground-to-ground gunnery range. The Corps did confirm the presence of small arms munitions at the site and identified 5 munitions-related areas for further investigation. The 5 munition-related areas include 2 former malfunction ranges, the 15 skeet ranges, the moving base range, and the range complex. These 5 areas have been categorized as munitions response sites. In November 2004, the 5 MRSs were assigned a RAC score of 5. RAC scores are assigned on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being the most hazardous. The scores are determined primarily by the types of munitions known or suspected to have been used at each MRS. As part of the Corps' inspection process, MMRP site inspections will be conducted at the 5 MRSs beginning spring 2010. At this time, the Corps is pursuing right of entry permission from current property owners. During the site inspection process, each MRS will be evaluated for the presence of military munitions. Soil samples will be collected and analyzed for selected metals including antimony, copper, lead, and zinc. Soil samples at select MRSs will be analyzed for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. The inspection results will determine the Corps' next steps. The results will also be used to complete the Hazardous Ranking System score for the US EPA and the Munitions Response Site Prioritization Protocol, which was established by the Department of Defense. The Munitions Response Site Prioritization Protocol includes 3 modules to evaluate the unique hazards posed by unexploded ordnance, discarded military munitions, and munitions constituents. Based on the results of the scoring of the 3 modules, each MRS is assigned one of 8 priorities. Priority 1 indicates the highest potential hazard, and Priority 8 indicates the lowest potential hazard. The priorities do not have specific assigned actions, meaning Priority 1 does not indicate the need for immediate removal action, nor does Priority 8 indicate that no action is required. To communicate the inspection results and to establish a two-way dialogue with the local stakeholders, the Corps has initiated a public involvement program. As part of this program, the Corps will release the findings of its MMRP site inspection reports, so that the community is familiar with the Corps' inspection activities and results. Fact sheets regarding the sites have been mailed to community leaders and interested parties. If you have information about site activities, would like to comment on the findings of the MMRP site inspection reports, or would like to join the mailing list, please contact the Arizona local office of the Los Angeles District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office through the U.S. Postal Service, or by calling 602-640-2015, extension 285.